to start off the next panel, which is the emergence of next-gen biomarkers. If you are here for that, welcome. If you're not, you're in the wrong plane. So, just kidding. I don't know how many of you have been there, and that's some of the announcements when you go into the airplane, and making sure that you're in the right ticket in the right place, and you're not flying to a different country or a city. So, once again, my name is Erwin Benedict Valencia. I'm from here in Miami. I was the former medical performance lead for the New York Knicks. Now I do birthdays and bar mitzvahs by hosting different parties and stuff. So that said, an amazing panel coming up, particularly with what's really big in the scene, which is the world I live in now, which is the longevity and wellness space, as it relates to biomarkers. So we have David Iglesias here from ThermoHuman, and we have Paul Robbins from BioCore, Manfredi Germano from Beyond Blood Diagnostics, moderated by the one, the only, Zacharias Papadakis from Barry University. Here we go, let's give him up.
So, thank you again for being here right now. The panel will discuss the biomarkers, the emergence of the next generation of biomarkers. And the first question for our panelists is that what are like the biomarkers right now, and if these biomarkers are considered to be the holy grail currently?
Yes, so we think the biomarkers are going to be are the holy grail because you can monitor people individually, and today a lot of the performance metrics that people do is at a team level or over many years, and having individual responses of people and how they respond to training on an individual physiological level is going to be very impactful for performance optimization.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I'm working at ThermoHuman, which is a thermography technology. We're not a direct biomarker, but we do correlate a lot with these biomarkers. At the end of the day, what we are trying to measure is internal load of the players, or what is happening inside the body of every player. So, answering the question, right now, he mentioned, more is about early adopters, but it's getting more and more teams that they are using biomarkers. But I would say there are some problems that these biomarkers they are facing. Probably we will go later with those. Yeah.
Yes. So my job is a little unique. I work mainly in the NBA, also a lot with tennis as well. But I analyze in-game data, and currently any of these in-game data is all optical, so we don't have any wearables on them yet. But we're doing a lot of research on the wearables. So the biomarkers, to me, are very important. I also have a performance lab that I advise on at Arizona State University, so that's where we get to test all these out. So as far as the Holy Grail, we're nowhere near that yet. Hopefully that's where we're going, but based on what I've seen so far, what we've tested out with our teams, what we tested out with the university, there's definitely a lot of upside coming, but there's a lot of things that are holding us back right now that I think we're going to talk about on this panel, but it's very unique that I see it's going to integrate with the tracking data that I've been doing for years, because it has to, but we're not even close yet. So anybody who's interested in these biomarkers, you're here at the right time because we're right at the beginning.
So, great for your response, but you say biomarkers, right? Can you tell us which ones, okay? And if we give us like an array of biomarkers, which ones do you think are the most important for us to know as end consumers, or maybe coaches, athletes, athletic directors, CEOs of sports, all of that stuff?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we, Beyond Blood, monitor bloods and anything that's inside your blood. We think that's of the multiple types of biomarkers one could have. Blood is the most important one because it affects everything. It goes around your body, affects everything. So any physiological responses you have is going to be one way or not another represented in your bloods as well. So to phenotype an athlete or even just a biohacker, anyone who wants to improve their health, they need to monitor their bloods as regularly as possible. And it's important to not just have a snapshot of your health every few weeks, every few years, but have it continuously. So it's more like a movie on how your health is improving or changing.
Can you name some of these biomarkers? Let's say it's glucose, cravings,
Yes.
like what?
So red blood cells in particular has a lot of potential. Red blood cells have a lot of derived parameters from oxygen transport to bone marrow, how well it's working, as well as your biological age. Of the top 10 parameters you need to monitor your biological age, the top 4 of these top 10 are related to the red blood cells and various properties of red blood cells. So we think red blood cells is probably the way to go.
Yeah, I think most of the teams right now, the top biomarkers that are used are CK, I would say lactate. Saliva, I think, is starting to grow nowadays. And then more and more, these new biomarkers about testosterone, about gut microbiome, which is, I think, is quite an interesting field right now. There's a bunch of them, and there is always a huge number of biomarkers that are available. The point is, the limitation of the biomarkers is first, obviously, the budget of the teams, how much money the teams, how much they can afford these biomarkers. Second, I think one of the second problems would be how much time you have with the players. You know that the time that the coaches they have with the players is quite limited. And the third one I would say is how much are you bothering the player. Or some of these biomarkers are invasive. You know that the players they have more and more power lately. So obviously you need to deal as well with players and what they want to do and what they don't want to do. So that's for me some of the limitations that biomarkers will need to face in the future.
Yeah, I can speak more about what we're working on right now, because what they were talking about is the biggest issue is time with the players. It's getting the buy-in from the players, then turning around and showing that there's actually something we can do, actionable. So that's the most important thing for me. So if you can't show an action with it right now, then you don't get the buy-in. And if you don't get the buy-in, then it just fades away very, very quickly. And we see products come and go all the time, mainly because of that. So we're working on a couple now right now. One is hydration, and there's other companies out there that you have to use a device that's roughly around $3,000, and somebody has to stick this in your mouth and then get a reading afterwards. We're working on something, and that doesn't sound bad, but it definitely is a problem with the teams and with players, is because, first of all, you have to have this machine, and you have to run around and test them. So it's you have to bring the machine with you. It's not big, it's not hard to do, but it's just one more step, and then you have to track down, and you have to test the player. So what we've been looking at is a different way of doing this, the exact same readings, but it's a disposable. It's just, you put it in your mouth, you test it, and it's going to give you what your hydration level is. So the player can do it themselves. So that's what I mean by it's got to be that simple, right? Even though there's companies out there that say they're doing hydration, if it takes a couple steps, we start seeing it fade away. And also what we see is that the reliability starts breaking down because they're not doing the same test all the time. Players are doing it really quickly because it's a hassle. So if it's something you just put in your mouth real quick, put it in the solution real quick, shake it up, and it gives you a reading, that's, it's going to give you the same data that the other company's going to do, but it's much quicker, and you can do it yourself. The other one we're doing is we want to look at lactate. We want to look at that live. But you're not going to continue to do the blood samples, especially on professional athletes. They're not going to have you take blood samples every minute. So what we're looking at is the one we're testing out is optical. So we're looking at the lactate levels with an optical. Basically, it looks like an iWatch, but it's showing me the lactate readings live. So things like that. Again, it's already out there, but how can we make it easier and actionable for that player right then?
Yeah, something I wanted to add on, and this is very important, about how the players are buying these new technologies or biomarkers. It is something that I think biomarkers have a little bit long way to do is using biomarkers or technologies to coach or to educate the player. So when we are talking about biomarkers, which are numbers or cells, something that the players they don't really understand, you cannot use that much that information to educate or to feel the player that is involved on this process. That's why in our case, thermography is quite easy to understand. We are measuring temperature, players understand temperature, players understand hydration. Some metrics are easier to get the players involved and to get the buy-in as soon as they understand the process. And I think coaches, strength conditioning, athletic trainers, they have way easier path to implement new technologies or biomarkers if the player understands and is educated on that.
Yeah, I think it's you said both of you said spot on, which is the interpretation of results. If you don't trust the results mean something, or you don't know how they could help you, even if it's a really incredible biomarker, it doesn't have any value to you. And that's the problem, is that you have a lot of companies, a lot of devices that are doing different things, and you have to measure in different ways, over different times. And the best is to eventually have one or very few devices that can measure pretty much everything you need, because you need to associate your individual response to something else. And for example, if you have high levels of red blood cells but you're dehydrated, it could just mean because you're dehydrated, it appears to be high. It doesn't mean you're producing more red blood cells. You need to have both hydration and red blood cells. So anything on its own is not very useful unless you have others as well.
So when it comes to biomarkers, right, we discussed a couple of those, but which one do you think is the most prominent one that the developers they have to focus on? Because we don't want to examine everything. We don't want to overload the consumers, okay, the coaches, the athletes with too much data. We need to find like maybe one or two. So which one do you think is the most prominent one, and how the startup companies that focus on this research development, they can actually overcome some barriers to get in touch with you and maybe identify which one is the best?
I'll start off by not saying what marker what I want. It's going to be more of what am I looking for, and you can figure out what biomarker you want to use for that. But it's recovery. For me, especially in the NBA, it's recovery. It's like you're playing. Like tonight we start. The season starts tonight, and you play maybe 3-4 games, and there's some rare times 5 games in a week. So I hate the term that the media came up with, load management. We want to manage loads, but it's more of how can I recover you? What biomarkers? What testing can I do to understand what state you're in right after the game, so then I can start my recovery treatment, or a lot of times in the NBA and definitely the NHL, because I know we started that in the NHL when I was doing that years ago. It was like the guys would come off the ice, and based on their ice time, they would have how many minutes they're going to be on a bike and train that night right afterwards. And I know that's a lot of weight training now. It's also going in the NBA right afterwards, because you don't want to get up the next morning to do weight training. See if you can put something out right now. But what markers can I use to determine what should that training be? What should that recovery treatment be right now, quickly, to act on them right after the game, and then again tomorrow morning when I'm going to do your recovery. So that's the biomarkers that we're looking for, is recovery, because it's a big turnaround. And in tennis as well, I know some people from the USTAs here that I've worked with, same thing. You got tournaments, and some of the tournaments you're playing every single day. And then if you're playing doubles, you might be playing twice a day. It's like, how do I recover? And what state am I in? What do I need to do? That's what I'm looking at a biomarker.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say that there is 1 or 2 biomarkers that they should all use. Again, it depends on what are you looking for. Obviously, it depends on the sports that you're playing. It's going to be a little different. It depends on how much time you have until the next game. That's going to change a lot as well. I would say regarding the teams, it's all more about methodology. How are you integrating that biomarker with what you have already for treatment, what you are doing with your athletic trainers? So I would say it's more about methodology and which type of biomarker is fitting in that methodology. But for sure, I would say from most of the teams that they are talking to us is, I would say, recovery, It is the biggest issue since all the sports they have more and more congested schedule. Then through recovery, then we have obviously different biomarkers. Thermography is, again, not a direct biomarker, but thermography can help on that as well. But again, it's going to be, depends on the methodology and depends on what are the coaches are focusing more on.
I completely agree. It depends on what you're looking for. But where I disagree is I do think that blood shows everything you need, including recovery, except these biomarkers are not yet being used for recovery. So in your blood cells, for example, respond to everything you do, whether you're tired, you're not tired, you're awake, you're recovering. It's all, any response your body has is shown through your blood. So in the case of recovery, for example, the activity of macrophages, white blood cells, muscle repair, all starts with the blood cells and how they respond. So by monitoring blood cells, you could see at the same time recovery of muscles, recovery of your lung capacity, recovery of all sorts of things. Hydration, coagulation, all comes down to blood. So we think that blood has a lot of potential, but it's untapped in yet. And the reason why it's untapped in is to do with the fact that normally blood tests are done in a clinic. They're rarely done by individuals. Individuals doesn't mean a coach or a trainer, it means literally someone in their house doing it themselves. Because the machines are not been engineered to be used by someone who has no idea what they're doing. And that's why they tend to be done in labs, and you need to have a needle to stick in your arm. Once you can bring blood testing machines into your kitchen, then they will start being used, and I think that companies will start using these blood results and come up with their own models and interpretations. So we think blood is a way to go.
Before I go to the next question, I'd like to open this to the floor and also throw out something like this. Like, you can bring like blood machine in my kitchen, and what is the fun of being active in sports? We have like exercise, that's one. And then the other thing is recovery or winning. I mean, where do we draw the line over here? Because from my perspective, I want to win, right? And I win if I can dunk the ball, if I score a goal, right? If I do something like this. Of course, recovery is important, but what is the line over here? So I'd like to take your.
I'm usually loud enough, we'll try on this side. Hi, Matt Waldron. I love the idea of biomarkers doing this kind of testing, everything from preventative to the top care, but one of the things that I've seen, I've worked a lot with Canadian companies who are very focused on AI and healthcare, is what are we doing to get the repository of those results sorted by age, ethnicity, et cetera, and see who works better on works or any kind of trends? Are we collecting that data, or are we individually stitching these kind of items?
I'm going to let these guys answer that because in my case, that's a major issue because who owns the data? So that's the first question. So at the level I'm at, that's what I always have to ask. So, but that is probably the most important thing. And when people are talking about AI, it's like, well, that's great, but we don't have enough data for that yet. And so hopefully these guys are collecting the data.
So great question. So it's very much in its infancy. It depends on jurisdictions. In Europe, I think it's a lot more control than maybe it is here. So as a company, we could be the data controller, but we can't analyze your data, for you, and we can't sell this data to someone else. What you can do, however, is connect our device to your app or to whatever platform you like, and then you can give access to those parameters that you're gathering to someone else to interpret it or to do modeling around it. But it's a short answer.
What about some of the technology to bring anonymity into data sets for health?
So to bring the technology.
To bring anonymity into the data so you can work it as a set without any identifiable HIPAA or AHA problems?
We do that already. We don't store any information about yourself. You're just a number. But
Yeah, from our side, exactly the same. So we anonymize the data. Also, what we are measuring is temperature of the skin. So it's just data, temperature data. We cannot know which person is just based on that data. The truth is, in Europe, even though it's a little bit more control, I don't think players still care that much as in the US about what is going to happen with that data, but it's something that will come up, and it will be a problem for the future, for sure.
Anything else from the audience?
Good afternoon. This message is for Paul in particular, and for the rest of you. Define recovery for me post-game, because if an athlete is rested and they have gone through the fed state, wouldn't that aid in your biomarker tracking? Or because post-game they're still cooling down off of whatever match they played. So I'm just curious about how to set parameters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what I mean by looking at post-game, I'm looking at what their actual workloads were, and did they have higher intensities, higher loads than they normally have, but I'm not trying to use that to say, oh, we're going to take tomorrow off. No, I'm going to say, all right, if we see that there's fatigue, again, loads are high, intensities start dropping off, we can see different markers of that in the game. It's like, okay, then I need to work on certain type of recoveries for them. A good example now is that we're giving this data minutes after the game. Actually, they're watching the data in game. If I have a lot of, I was going to plan on doing some plyometrics with the guy after the game, but I see that he's done more jumps than he's done normally in the game. It's like, all right, I'm going to scrap that. I'm not going to do plyometrics. If I didn't have this data, I would have gone with the program, and I could have just overloaded him. So things like that, that's what I'm looking at. It's like, what is a norm for him, and how do I make that adjustment for him based on what he did actually in the game? And that's what I was talking about with the hockey. It's like, they did just ice time for a long time. It's like, okay, based on how many minutes you're out there, that's how many minutes you're going to be on a bike. Well, now we're more sophisticated. It's like, okay, how many accelerations, how many hits that you have? All right, now we're going to make some other adjustments in your training.
On the blood level, does that mean that you would then look at nutrition after that with your biomarker indicators to have strategies going forward for the next week, or how they should address their matches going forward?
So is that for recovery? For recovery, you can measure many different things. It depends how you know what you're interested in. What we'll just mention here was interesting is based on the result, basically. You see the result that the person is jumping less, more or less. At the bloods, it depends on what you're interested in recovery. So if it's muscle recovery, macrophages, for example, are very important to see the level of macrophages, to see if your muscle is in recovery phase or not. And over time, you build a profile of you as an individual, because your recovery will be different to someone else's. So you having a high level of a certain type of cell, it doesn't mean that you're in a different phase than someone else, because you respond differently to another person. So you want to measure, as often as you can, to start building your profile when it looks normal to you. And as Paul was saying, with the results of you having recovered, we know what your bloods are then, so then we know where you are in the curve, essentially.
And just to add to that, the other end is the hydration. And to me, right now, what we're looking with hydration is how dehydrated you are. These guys are always dehydrated, and then they're getting on an airplane and getting more dehydrated. It's more of an education tool to them, so they understand and say, hey, this is the level that you're at. And that's why we're looking at the type of testing to tell you exactly what your hydration level is, opposed to some of those other ones that have been out that it's like it's a kind of a patch that would just tell you how much you've lost. Well, I don't know where you started. So, I mean, what's your deficit to begin with? So that's why I'm looking at those things. And it's probably going to be more of an education for the athletes than anything else at first. It's like they understand, I need to take this much fluid in.
Any other question? So, before we move to the next question, we covered some of the biomarkers, and I would like to know right now what might be the new biomarkers that may emerge in the near future, right? And also think about outside the box. Like we discussed about things that they somehow fall under the definition of what the biomarker is, but what about psychology? Okay, can we use elements like this as a biomarker to assist the recovery, to assist the performance for the game?
So you're absolutely right. That's I didn't say psychology. You can't measure psychology with your blood, unfortunately. So you spotted something here that I said was untrue. So we're not monitoring psychology at all. But as to the future of biomarkers in blood, that's what we are most interested in, is proteins in different concentrations of proteins, in particular low levels. So, like I said earlier, a lot of biomarkers are not, people don't measure because they can't be measured. But once it could be measured, it opens an entire new door. And the challenge in regular testing, as you were saying, is people don't want to get stabbed in the arm every week. So it's having very, very small volumes to have repeated blood. And this means that the limit of detection becomes very, very hard because you're measuring very small amounts within very small amounts. So I think protein biomarkers, all sorts, creatinine or CRP and so on, will be very useful to add to blood. Does that answer your question?
From our perspective, and it's funny that you mentioned psychology, because I think that's where thermography is actually going. Right now we are not able to measure psychology, but we are able to measure stress, anxiety, all those effects on the central nervous system. They are reflected in this case in the skin, temperature, how the body is reacting to that. That's something that we already can do. We can measure the stress and the effects of that stress on the body. And the future, where thermography is going, is actually measuring the emotions. So you have a camera, and different emotions that you are feeling is affecting the blood flow, the different regions of your face. You can measure that, and these are some papers, some initial papers measuring lying, happiness, and how that's affecting the temperature of your face. So I would say that's something where we could go. Talking about more real biomarkers, from my perspective about gut microbiome, I would say that's something really, really interesting. These new discoveries about a new independent brain and how that can affect the performance of the players. That's, I think, that's really interesting for me.
Yeah, this is the reason I come to these conferences is to learn. I mean, I'm sitting up on the panel here, and I had David I've known for years, so but I didn't know that his technology will go to this next new level, which I think is very exciting because it's definitely something that we talk about a lot, but we don't have a solution. So, and I haven't. We just met with Beyond Blood, so to me that's very exciting, and I really want to learn a lot more about it because I see that that's the future. If we get it down to that level, that's what I said right from the beginning. It's the problem that we have out there. It's not knowing what we want to test. It's how do we get it easy enough that everybody can use it and then interpret it and then have an action with it. So I'm glad to be on the panel with these two guys.
So from a practical standpoint, we know that one biomarker, lactate, has been used extensively, so we can tell right now, I can train you on the lactate threshold. Is there a possibility to move to a stage that I can say, I can train you on thermography, or I can train you based on the red blood cells concentration or something like this?
Certainly, yes. For red blood cells, absolutely you can monitor the progress of someone in the training and in recovery, as I said earlier as well, based on their bloods. It would be good to have other things as well, which could be found from bloods in the future, because today we can't have that resolution. But if you can pair bloods now with a few other devices, you can get a huge amount of information. And psychology, if you can add that on as well, you have a pretty good profile of the athlete's performance and recovery.
Yeah, you mentioned about lactate, and we have correlated thermography with lactate, with different biomarkers, lactate in particular as well. And the idea is precisely that you don't need this data just to have it. You don't need to say, you're at this position. The idea is, okay, you have in this position, you are in here. What are you going to do to get better? So you obviously, the idea about most of these studies, what are the treatments or the exercise that you're going to do to get better? Through lactate, biomarkers, through thermography. The point is, okay, let's go now individualize your training, individualize the treatment to get into a better position, more adapted to the loads, or the temperature, or whatever you are facing.
Yeah, Yeah, that's why we're starting to work with this, for the lactate testing is through an optical system right now, so we can see that live during their training and make adjustments. My background is metabolic, so I've done everything around energy systems and training. So for me heart rate is a nice guide, but we use it as a guide. Wattage, power output is more important. Now if I can get lactate, then I can look at during the intervals, can I see when they're truly recovering? So then I can push them to the highest level in the next interval instead of just continuing to break them down. I want to see that recovery in that interval as well. So that's why I see this real time, if we can do it through blood or what we're trying to do with optical, thermal, I think it's definitely a direction it's got to go. So.
Good. So now for the audience, before we go to lunch, any questions? Guns one, two. So I think we're done for the day, and we can head to lunch, right?
I'll figure everyone.